Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third out of three bridge dinner conversations that we're having in conjunction with our digital pre-COP conference, Get Ready for COP26. My name is Jonas Klevhag. I'm the moderator, collaboration facilitator, and whatnot for the bridge. But also today, I had the honor of being a virtual dinner host for this motley crew. Get Ready for COP26 is arranged by the Bridge and many different companies and cities and organizations and in order to highlight the good examples that can contribute to fulfilling the Paris Agreement, but also to give the public an update, a status report on how we're doing in relation to the Paris Agreement. A status report that we hopefully can bring back to the breakfast tables and discuss them there. That's our ambition, at least. We've previously done these bridge dinners, future dinners, as live occasions where we've invited to some 20 odd people with diverse backgrounds to a 3-course meal. And for each course, we've introduced it with a short provocation about the future, and then invited everyone to sit down and have a conversation on that topic. Doing this digitally has obviously allowed us to invite people from afar today, from Stockholm, from Småland, and from Lund, and yesterday actually from New York. But it also allowed us to split the whole dinner up in 3 different episodes. Today we're having dessert. And for the starter, we talked about how to get more players to do more for the climate. For the main course, we discussed the very important question of how to keep up the spirit, how to stay in the race for the long run. Today, we're gathering around the question, what do we tell our future generations? Another important and intriguing question. For this part of the dinner, I'm joined by a very distinguished panel of guests. First, we have Lena Ek, the chairman of Forest Owners Association Södra Skogsägarna, former Swedish Minister of Environment, also a pioneer or a front figure in climate and sustainability work globally. A warm welcome, Lena. Have you had any recent thoughts about the future lately?
All the time, actually. I think it's very important that we think about the future and get ready for the future and prepare for the future. And by this, I mean study, discuss, and reflect.
Good one. Study, discuss, and reflect. A nice way to approach the future, I think. A curious one as well. Thank you, and warm welcome to joining this dessert part of the dinner. Matthias Goldman, the Chief Sustainability Officer of Sweco. You're an author, a public speaker, and also you were previously the CEO of the liberal and green think tank Forest. Any recent thoughts about the future from your side?
I've been worried and concerned and have had sleepless nights, but the last few days and weeks have given me some sort of confidence that we might be able to tell a positive story to future generations. Starting with the EU having the climate law in place and the taxonomy in place, and then we had President Biden's 2-day talks with the biggest emitting countries, but also the most inspirational countries. So I think it's right that we are dessert because the best things come late, and I think at the very last minute we're actually starting to see some great opportunities to solve this crisis.
Fantastic. That's so some highlights in your recent thoughts about the future. Thank you and warm welcome. And last but not least, Hannah Stanton, the founder of thegoals.org, and also a member of the Royal Foundation for Young Leadership. That's a very, very interesting set of assignments you have there. When did you last think about the future, Hannah?
I think about the future all the time. At the moment, I have a little 1.5-year-old, and obviously, we're looking at her. There comes a big sense of responsibility, and if that wasn't there before, that is definitely there now. From a more general point of view, of course, I mean, if you are in the sustainability business and if you care about sustainable development, you look at your everyday life and the tasks ahead, and the question of how are we going to work on this and stop talking but actually do something about it. That is on my everyday mind.
And good reasons to be reminded about the future with young ones running around. That's obviously great inspiration. Thank you, and a warm welcome. You've chosen the best part of the dinner, I think. I'm not normally a dessert kind of guy. I'm more a starter one, onto the starter. But today, I really think you've hit the jackpot. To give us an idea of what we would have eaten if we were to meet for a live dinner, I asked my colleague Sophie Granat, who's actually our own master chef from 3 years back, and what she would do based on the main question today: what do we tell our future generations? So she immediately thought about a positive vision, symbolizing our faith that the future can be really good if we make the effort. So please imagine yourself in front of a crystal ball made from chocolate. And it's filled with chocolate fondant. Now it's getting really rich. Not too big, but just the right size. And where the outside of this crystal ball of chocolate is melted to reveal its inside by hot salted caramel sauce, and everything accompanied by a cool and creamy bowl of Oatly ice cream. There you go.
This is so cruel. It's so cruel sitting here with an empty coffee cup.
You'll have to compensate for that yearning feeling or craving by inspiring us with thoughts instead. So, yes. Well, today's question is based on the fact that our future generations recently, or the last years, has actually in a louder and louder voice expressed a concern that they have little trust in the future that we're building for them. So I would like to start with you, Lena. What are your thoughts on how we should or could answer our future generations when they ask us how they should trust it?
Well, I think a little bit of perspective is maybe in place. If you look back 100 years or 50 years, the world was definitely different when it came. If you compare opportunities for studies, for debate, for contact between people, for education, for simple things but necessary things like food on your table and roof over your head, and as we've all learned the last year, the possibilities of medicines and vaccines. So in a way, it's a good starting point. On the other hand, there's been a lot of misuse of resources globally and historically. And can we solve this? Absolutely. I'm very optimistic about this, but it needs knowledge, it needs research, and it needs more innovation, but also determination. And I think the younger generation is very determined that we should solve this. I think it's extremely important that, and as I participated in the negotiations when UN decided on the Sustainable Development Goals, and it was like a no-go. Everyone said it's not possible. A big multilateral organization like the United Nations can never, ever decide on useful, sustainable goals. But it happened, and they are there. And it's fascinating to see that the countries in the world has been able to decide on how we combine ecological issues and challenges with social challenges like fighting poverty, and to be able to do this also economic targets, and to weave this together. And I think this happened because the countries or the states and governments and the negotiators for once was able to listen to each other and discuss in a serious way. And for me, this is the best sign of hope. And to have these serious and trustworthy negotiations and results, you have to talk to each other and listen. And what I'm worried about right now is not only a generational gap, but a gap between countries and people globally. I think we in Western countries have to understand the absolute need for the fight of poverty in other parts of the world. And we need to be able to combine the fight against climate change and other environmental problems and close to disasters at the same time as we provide opportunities for all people to have a life with quality and joy. And in this, we have a responsibility to help out in this prospect. And it means, of course, development aid, it means medical solutions, but also solutions for food, transport, housing, and all the things that we have learned the last 100 years or the last 50 years since Western countries started to fight pollution and to develop our countries. And it all started out with education. That is the historical lesson. Education for everyone, boys and girls, and whatever conditions you come from. Education and to foster dialogue. So, and with this, I think the young people can rightly demand support from us that have a couple of more years with us. So I'm very positive. I think the tools are there. We need to cooperate to use them, and it's absolutely possible to solve the global challenges.
Fantastic, inspirational thoughts. And I do think that when you started with that scenario, the seemingly impossible scenario that everyone states is impossible, that it was possible, is a good example of showing that today as well, even though it may seem a dark prospect to trust the future, it is possible to do so. And also that when you point at listening by or educating yourself to a position where you're actually able to listen to others is an enormous inspirational thought as well. Yes. Any comments or any thoughts there to the last reflection?
Yes, I very much agree with what Lena said about what's impossible. Might take a little bit longer, but it can be done. And Lena could easily have had several other examples about how we managed to get the Paris Agreement in place, or when Lena was at European Parliament, how they managed to get the chemical legislation REACH in place, and so forth. So it happens if there is somebody who is really determined to get it happening. And I want to share with you the main reason why we at Sweco focus so much on climate and sustainability. We've decided at Sweco Sweden that we're going to be climate positive by 2030, so a whole lot faster than the climate law says that we have, the carbon law says that we have to be in line with the Paris Agreement, or much faster than the science-based targets. And it's not based on legislation. Legislation is often too vague to be really driving when it comes to climate action from companies. It's certainly not customers. We have some customers that demand it from us, but more often than not, we have to sort of push the customers to accept our climate-friendly solutions. It's more and more investors, especially after the taxonomy was passed at EU level the other day, and we see similar initiatives as the taxonomy, for instance, happening at the ASEAN Asia organization. So that's starting to happen, but the main driver is exactly the one you asked about, Jonas. The main driver is young professionals who are either already with us or who we want to attract as employer. And of course, they're going to still ask, so how much is in the envelope in terms of money? But more and more, they're asking very sharp questions about whether our sustainability work, and first and foremost, climate, is in line with their ambitions and their ideals. And if not, they're simply never going to work with us. We've seen that with huge companies like Volkswagen. When they were criticized for Dieselgate, they didn't lose very much in share value. They didn't lose very much in sales, but they lost confidence with the general public, and especially with the best and the brightest of generation millennials, Generation Z, Generation Greta, if you want. They will only join us if we are top-notch when it comes to sustainability.
Fantastic, yeah. Well, good examples. Hannah, did you have any reflections on Lena's point there, that you work a lot with the young generation, obviously, in the foundation you're part of?
I think this is but what Lena said is exactly that education for sustainable development is what I've dedicated the last years to. And I remember that moment when the SDGs were adopted in New York and the 2030 agenda were adopted very vividly, sitting there outside the civil society, which was a huge fight, and we were there in the end. And I think that was the moment I have carried with me, in the sense of there is a point where we can all agree. But the thing is that everybody needs to be involved in the conversation. We can't have those conversations about the future in silos. We have to have those conversations across groups in order to get the ball properly rolling. And this is what I meant by stop talking, let's walk. And I think this is something that Generation Greta, if we want to call them that, or if we want to adhere to other groups, regardless, is to make people meet, to get people together, and to get people to understand in order to move forward. I think if we want the next generation to come along with us, we need to do more than just reach out and say, oh, hello, here you are, nice to see you. We need to actually create that trust through openness, through willingness to work together and to cooperate really, properly, meaningfully, and just because when the young people I work with, they often say, well, the old people, they come and talk to us, but then they don't do anything. They come to harvest our ideas, but then that's it. So if we really want to make sure that everybody is on board, we have to mean cooperation. We have to mean working together and actually do it as well. And that's what will create trust. And that is also what will create results.
How do you recruit, Matthias at Sweco? How do you recruit the Generation Greta?
Oh, in so many ways. Well, one of them where we really see a direct link to sustainability is people who just get in touch by themselves. We don't necessarily have an ad out. We haven't asked anyone. We haven't participated at a meeting with students, but we've been out there discussing sustainability. So that is, I think, a key message to everyone, that if you want to attract the best and the brightest, the ads saying we're hiring is not nearly as efficient as just being out there and walking the talk and talking the walk, both of it together.
Okay. And Lena, you are you're chairing a forest owners association where most of your members are actually handing over a business that's a forest, a planted tree takes 80 years to grow. So that's a time perspective that far out reaches the perspectives that we're talking about normally. So in a way, you're already sort of hiring the new generation or the young generation by trees.
Yes, well, I think we shouldn't forget Malala. Young women and education. I think it's really important, and to as Hannah said, to be serious and do actually perform, not only talk. And if you are, I mean, you're quite nerdy from a sustainability point of view, if you put a lot of money into planting and a lot of money into green planning of your forest and a lot of money in managing your forest, and the comes 80 years later. Then you have to trust the sustainability issues. You have to trust the circular economy. You have to trust the people trust you in what you're doing. Otherwise, how can you sustain your family? So this is of course difficult, because in other parts of the world we have the terrible examples of huge companies taking down hectares after hectare with rainforest in different parts of the country, which really puts a lot of people into desperate poverty, destroys the forest, destroys the soil, and starts erosion and creates deserts. And to be able to say that there's something in the other line, everything isn't white or black. There are also better examples on how you could work sustainability with raw materials and work with a circular mind. And also here, I think education and debate and discussion is really important, and to focus on the core, and that is the fossils. I mean, oil and coal, and to be able to replace oil and coal with other materials. And I'm sure we will find new scientific solutions on this, new building methods, new materials, new ways to do this. But the raw material has to come from somewhere, and the way oil and coal has dominated our societies, our economies, our future planning is really crazy if you look into in a more historical perspective. And if you draw the line from now to the future, I mean, we managed in 100 years, we've developed an oil society, and it takes a lot to get out of an oil society. And I think it needs cooperation, and also to understand that different countries may have different solutions. I mean, take the climate negotiations, for example, and I've been there in different positions for years and years and years, and spent nights and nights and nights on these negotiations. When we had a system that was extremely bureaucratic and detailed, the whole debate and the whole discussion and the whole negotiations were kidnapped into details, and a lot of people forgot the big lines, the focus. Get rid of oil and coal. So that's why the Paris Agreement, I think, succeeded. And I think it's very promising. And we have to work together so that we're not buried in details of bureaucracy again. We have to focus on the big picture. Get rid of oil and coal and fast. Because otherwise we will have a lot of other problems with food distributions, energy, flooding, storms, and all the things. And here is also a danger that we paint everything in black, and there is a danger that young people lose trust and end up in a situation where they think everything is hopeless. It's not. We can prove over and over again that we've solved very serious global issues. The ozone layer, I remember when it was huge.
I'm thinking there on that note. On that note, Lena, I'm thinking that...
as well.
On that note, I'm thinking that trust has been lost. It's not a question that we might lose that trust. It's now a question of hopefully building back at least part of that trust, but also on delivering on the Paris Agreement and the Sustainable Development Targets, even without the trust. We are running out of time. We need to reduce emissions by at least half in a decade. And a lot of countries, including Sweden, need to be by net zero very soon. That means that we have to do, by and large, with the companies that we have, with the political leaders that we have, and with the lack of trust that we have. And that means that we need to find the incentives so that this change to sustainability happens, even if there is no trust in the politicians or the business leaders ahead, because we simply don't have the time to rebuild what we ruined by reacting so late and by being, as you point out, so recklessly dedicated to fossil fuels for so long.
That's a sharp but very grim picture that you're painting there, Matthias. But still, would you use that to phrase an answer back to the future generations, the future leaders?
I would say that the reason why we won the combat against climate change was that we did not believe in that it has to be done by better education or by trust, because we ran out of those things. We ran out of time, and the only way to win this fight now is to make it easy and fun and profitable to win the combat against climate change. Otherwise, it's simply going to take too long. I have great confidence in people like Greta Thunberg and her generation in inspiring their part of the globe. But we see that if we're focusing on sacrifice and what is now a global word, scum, shaming what needs not to happen, it's not going to go fast enough. So we need to find the drivers to make change happen faster. And I totally agree with Greta. I would love to see a different kind of leadership. I would love to challenge and lead at least parts of the market economy. But since we have so little time left to do such huge impacts in terms of reducing emissions and reaching the different SDGs, we have to do that within the market economy, and we have to make do with basically the political leaders that we already have.
So you're basically saying to the younger generation. Sorry, Anna, please.
Now, I'm just thinking that requires a great amount of courage, and I think the leaders of today, regardless whether they're in business or in civil society or in government, they have to summon that courage to the best of their abilities. Because if we do not have any other leaders, then that courage has to come from them in order to make those disruptive changes. For me, it's one of those things is we know what we need to do. And I guess this is the big question. Why on earth is nobody doing it? And to me, that comes back to the fact that it is too painful to make those individual choices if I do it on my own. However, we have to start somewhere. So you have to start with yourself, regardless in which position you are, in order to make those disruptive changes, to be brave, to be courageous, and actually start somewhere. And I think the example here is to really not only trust in everybody else, but also trust in yourself to be able to make that first step. It's frustrating to see all the talking when we have the solutions at hand. It's frustrating to know that we have to solve it within the system we got because we have little time if we don't summon the courage to actually move forward. So I think everybody in a position of power, be it over your own life, be it over a company, be it over a country, be it over an organization, doesn't matter, needs to look at where can I summon the courage to make the changes I know I need to make. And how do we reach those that have not understood what changes they have to make? And I don't think that there are many that they don't know what they have to do, but they have other drivers, other focus, other incentives that keep them in their track. So we have to find ways and courage and muster the courage to say what needs to be said and move them out of those tracks and move them ahead. And for me, that's the nut to crack, to really have this spillover of courage to dare to make disruptive changes, regardless of where you are, regardless of where you have power.
Fantastic.
In a way, I'm comparing with when Sweden was electrified. Is that the correct word? When we brought electricity to all homes and buildings. Not everyone was like this. Not everyone was happy about this, but the decisions were taken, and they were taken in democracy. And I think democracy is part of the solution. There are people saying that we need a strong leader that takes the decision for everyone else. But I think that democracy goes hand in hand with and is a vital part, a platform for the SDGs. And in a democracy, you also take care of minorities, you take care of the people that need it. And that is a way of bringing global solutions. I'm a little bit annoyed that some of the decision makers in Europe is sort of thinking only about Europe, not about the other parts of the world that we really need to bring with us in this transformation. And I think transformation is absolutely possible. We could talk about electricity, we could talk about telephones, and a lot of other technical solutions that has improved life for people, and how this this development has taken place. And this I give Matthias right, because of course there are market forces, and when you see that you could get a better life with some kind of technology, or by behaving in a certain way or whatever, most people tend to do that, and that is why I think it's possible. But there is certainly a responsibility for us to have the means and the money to provide the solutions, to also point the way and provide the platforms for people in developing countries. And if we're not doing that, I think we will face a very difficult future, because we're in this together. There's no way to have secluded small islands. We have to bring the whole globe with us when we face the challenges.
Leaving no one behind.
Yeah. We need to put our money where our mouth is, basically, and walk instead of just talk. I brought with me here from you, Lena, to use the old examples that the impossible is possible, actually. We've done it before. We can do it again. That's one way to answer the future generation. Another one is to say or to show how we make it easy, profitable, and fun, which basically allows for the future generation to stay in it, and to see how it can actually build for the future. And the other one, perhaps, and the third one from you, Hannah, to muster the courage, actually, to show how it can be easy, profitable, and fun, and that we can trust that we can do it again, that we have done before in human history. To me, this has been a tremendous teaser on how to actually start crafting an answer back to the generations that ask for trusting the future again. Lena, would you like to make a closing remark here, or a final comment?
Yes,
please.
I'd love to. And I would like to point out the personal responsibility that Hannah mentioned before. This is not going to happen by itself or by someone else. And we have all the power and the possibilities to change not the life, not only for ourselves, but also for our friends and neighbors, and for people that we haven't even met, by our deeds and our acts, and how we take on responsibility. And that is also why I talk about education and dialogue.
Mm-hmm. So we have to basically point the finger back at ourselves, every one of us, to trust the future ourselves. That's how we can help the future generation trust the future as well. Great closing remark there. Thank you, Lena. So thanks for sharing your thoughts on this topic. What do we tell our future generations? Many very inspiring and thought-provoking ideas to bring with me here. I hope you enjoy the imagined dessert, and that you're full of not just food imaginations, but also inspirational thoughts about the future.
Food for thought.
Thank you.
Could I change the chocolate to fruit salad instead?
Oh, you can indeed. You can indeed, but it won't be a crystal ball of fruit salad, which sort of spoiled the metaphor and the symbol of a crystal ball. But let's have the fruit salad inside the crystal ball instead.
And I think
any other alterations?
Yes, my mom always taught me that if you're naughty, you don't get any dessert. And I think as a generation, I represent the ones that have been naughty and don't deserve any dessert as yet. So we need to prove that we're worth the pudding and the dessert that's in front of us next time we meet.
The proof is in the pudding.
Good point. I think that was the brilliant closing remark. Even makes you an honorable citizen of Gothenburg for that pun-ish end. Thank you so much for joining this dessert part of the dinner, Lena Ek, Matthias Goldman, and Hannah Stanton. And thank you, everyone, for listening in to this short episode of a dessert of the Bridge Dinner Conversations. Bye for now.